Well, hello everyone. I'm Kaye here on my homestead in Tennessee, and I am doing a series on my sewing and knitting, which I hope to inspire you to do the same. So we have to go back in time a little bit because once I started gardening in 2011, that was the end of my knitting and sewing. I did so much in the 80s and 90s, and I got a great response on my introduction video, which was just, I didn't even plan it. This I planned so that I am more prepared for materials and lighting and everything, and so I hope you enjoy it. Please share with a friend. If you're new here, I am a gardener. My channel is about gardening, sustainability, prepping, medicinal plants, cooking one-pot meals. Yeah, I kind of try to do it all here. I'm not saying I'm perfect at everything, but I do try very hard to be sustainable, self-sufficient, and inspire. So with that, I'm going to launch into, I'm going to take you back to 1980. Okay. I hope you had a chance to grab yourself a mug of something. I'm having my cacao and raw honey. And today I always share or try to always share when I think of it, my essential oils. And I can't think of anything I need more than joy. We are on the cusp of a new year. In fact, this will go up tomorrow, which is New Year's Eve. And today would have been my sister's birthday, so I wanted to share joy, and joy it is. This is the most wonderful blend. I am a distributor for Young Living, have been for a long time, and now I just enjoy the oils, but if anybody wanted to inquire about them or start selling them, do think of me. First of all, I've just showed you what we call a Z card, and I have a stack of these somewhere that are loose, but when I was going through some photos to update the video for my mother's funeral, because she had prepared this, she had planned her funeral a decade before, everything down to a T, what was going to be on the casket, what kind of flowers, who was going to say what, who the pallbearers would be, everything was decided in advance. But she had made a video back then, and a lot happened in those 10 years. Her family got a lot bigger. So a lot of that had to be redone. I mean, the whole video had to be redone. And so in looking for those videos, I found this scrapbook. Now, my mother was a scrapbook queen, and she made over 100 scrapbooks. She never got into the beautiful, perfect, with all the little accessory things that you can buy, and she didn't do that. Everything was Scotch tape, Elmer's glue, a ruler, and she carried her Sears and Roebuck catalog with her. Literally, when she flew out to LA, she brought that because she knew the purpose of her coming was to make a tennis scrapbook for my son Walker, which she did. We worked on scrapbooks for my sons for 3 weeks, 8-10 hours a day. At any rate, I had forgotten that she had made a scrapbook. I had sent her my tear sheets and my Z card. I don't know why it's called a Z card. I don't even remember, but I remember these cards. In order to get into modeling, and I wasn't tall enough to be a fashion model, you had to be 5'9". And if I stood up very, very straight, I was 5'7.5", which became 5'7" very, very soon. And a year ago, I was measured at my physical, my annual physical, and she said 5'3". Okay, I said, what did you say? She said 5'3". I said, I can't be 5'3". I was 5'7". Let's do it again. And so we did it again, and it was 5'3". And that's how much you can shrink when you get older and you're hard on your body. And I evidently have. I have a compressed neck. I have a compressed lower spine, degenerated, and that's from skiing. And this is from, I feel like I ruined my neck, like pruning my acacia tree in my California garden. I got to where I couldn't even look up anymore. And I suppose if you lost 1/8 of an inch all the way down, or 1/4 of an inch, in some cases my discs are paper thin, so I've lost almost the whole 1/2 an inch. And so there you go, 4 inches shorter. Oh, it's really something. Back to modeling. I looked pretty good when I first got to New York, and I thought, well, I'm going to do some modeling because I had recently gotten into the unions. I was able to join, we had 2 unions back then, and they had tried to merge. AFTRA and SAG had tried to merge for 40 years. They were never able to merge the pension funds, and so that's what they fought about for decades, and they finally managed to work it out, but the pension funds are still separate. At any rate, back then, if you got into one union, you could join another union. But if you weren't in a union, you did not get considered for union work. So you had to get in the union. All that's gone to heck by now. When I was leaving, it was already, many people were working non-union just for a small amount of money. The rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And so I got out at the right time. But anyway, I did some modeling in Washington, D.C. I had a modeling agent after I first moved to Washington, D.C. after I graduated. I went to D.C. because I had a cousin, an older cousin, who was in the Navy, and he was stationed in, well, they were living in Arlington, so he was stationed in the area at that time, and so I stayed with them until I found a place, and then I thought, well, what am I going to do? I have an art degree. And so I got a job on Capitol Hill, just as an office worker for a senator from Tennessee. And it was very frustrating for a creative soul like me to be stuck in an office for 10 hours a day, no overtime. You're not paying into Social Security. I don't know, I don't really understand. That was like a gap in my record. And no overtime, you just have to stay until the job is done. And so the job was never done, so you stayed as long as you could, and then you came back the next day. And it was very frustrating. And anyway, I joined a modeling agency in Washington. And I did a few jobs. They were in the newspapers, and I did one little local TV modeling job where I was modeling clothing on a runway, and I was able to join AFTRA from that because daytime television was monitored or controlled, or what's the word, by AFTRA, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and radio and news was all AFTRA. And then prime time and all of that, movies, all of that was in SAG. So SAG was the more expensive, harder union to get into at the time. And so I was able to join the union for this little modeling job. And little trunk shows, no big deal, just clothing. And got into AFTRA, and then I joined SAG. And then my first appearance in a movie, I digress, we're going to get to the sewing, was Barry Levinson's Diner. And that was shooting in Baltimore. He was a Baltimore guy, or maybe he still is. It was set in Baltimore, a bunch of young kids, and one of them worked in a beauty parlor, you may remember. And I had to sing with her and Mickey Rourke in that movie. But I was just set dressing. I was just a pretty girl working in the beauty parlor. But I was able to get into SAG from doing that. So that's how I got started, if anybody's interested. When I was and I was still in Washington, so I did a bunch of print work. And I also met a wonderful photographer whose name was Gary Schleicher, and I would have never remembered that had I not found my tear sheet in this one. But what we're going to start with today are a couple of outfits. The first outfit I remember making is this blouse and this skirt, and I'm going to pull it out. And I wound up using, and I made those specifically for print jobs, because you might have noticed in the Z card, let's see, some of these are actual jobs and some I just, I did with a photographer. But this one where I'm standing holding the Pyrex dish, I am wearing the skirt, not the blouse. But I did wear the blouse in several. When you were doing print work back in the day, you had to bring, and you still do, you have to bring your own wardrobe. So I didn't have a lovely photograph that I had a photographer make with this outfit, but I wanted to show it to you because it's the first one. And I know I did it in 1980 because I wore it to my brother's and sister-in-law's wedding in 1981. And here we go. So here is the skirt, and both the skirt and the blouse are made from 100% linen. And you just can't beat linen, which is also what I'm wearing. I'm wearing linen. I did make this dress that I'm wearing after I went to New York. But this is the blouse. And I made two little ties because at the time we wore little bow ties around the neck, and then maybe a navy blazer. And I do have a shot like that somewhere. But this is just stunning. And I wanted to mention, I'll give you a close-up of these, but I wanted to mention this skirt. Now this skirt I made in 1980, so that means it is 44 years old, right? 44 years old, and it looks like new. Linen hanging in a closet is always going to have some wrinkles. But this was a skirt that had a soft pleat, and it's actually a tuck. When you bring two pieces of fabric together like so, you're going to make a soft pleat underneath, but it's really a tuck that you're sewing together. Now, another way to make a pleat is just to overlap, and it depends on what the pattern calls for. But you can overlap, and then you can sew this here. You can top stitch it. But these, because it's a tuck, the seam is invisible and just beautiful. And all of these things that I made back in the day, I made a certain waist size, and these waistbands do not give at all. And over the decades, women have decided they like waistbands that give and stretch, so you're comfortable. But when you're young and you're thin and you just don't have any extra weight, it's fine. So a waistband, you can kind of get an idea of my sewing. This was the first real outfit. Well, I take that back. I made one outfit when I was going off to college. But this was the first really finely made. I don't know if you can see the stitches. But the back has soft gathers in the back. And so it starts out just a big panel, and you make the soft pleat. But linen is just the most beautiful fabric. Let's check out the pockets. Pockets are lined with matching rayon. I usually used rayon in the pocket, not silk. It's just more cost effective. And there you have the skirt. Now, I don't get rid of anything. I mean, hardly anything. But I could not find this skirt to save me. And I was going to make this video yesterday, and I just thought I could not have gotten rid of this skirt. I did too beautiful a job of sewing it. And you know, when you work so hard on something and it is a fabric that will last 100 years, if it's not, you know, if it's taken care of, you just don't get rid of it because you think, well, maybe I could wear it again someday. You know. But I wish I had a tape measure, but I guarantee you that waist is not more than 26 inches. And I'm afraid I'm more than that right now. So I could not find this skirt. I went through all of this. I moved in a few things just for the videos here. This probably represents maybe a third of my handmade clothes that I still have. But I went through everything 2 times each last night, through every zippered bag, everything. And I'm going, it is not possible that I would have gotten rid of this skirt. It's too, it was like my first big outfit. And I know, I remember making it in my apartment in Virginia. So I had this when I went to New York and I could not find it. And I was going to do the video without it because I found another skirt that I also made that this shirt matches. And this is a straight skirt, obviously. And it has the waistband that's not straight. It shapes a little bit, so this is your waist rather than the waistband being right on your waist. It starts at your waist and it's shaped a little bit for your stomach. And this is, yes, this one's lined. This one is not lined. And this one is lined with rayon. And of course I always used seam tape. In this case I used lace. And we can take a closer look at anything if you leave me a comment below and say, oh, I want to see closer details. I can do that in the next one. But I have to find out, you know, what you're really interested in seeing. This blouse, I absolutely love this blouse. Yeah, it has a little bit of give here. There's no dart here. Very often on a fitted blouse you'll have a dart here for the bust, but it has loose, so it bloused. When you cinched it at the waist, it had a blousier look, which goes with the blousy sleeve. Blouse is a word and blousy is a word. But this is really cool. You see the shoulder has a piece that is stitched. This is the inside. So you see what you've done is you've made all of these little tucks. And so you have this shoulder placket, and from that tuck, the blouse comes out of it. The sleeve, the blousey sleeve comes out of that. And the construction on it is just fabulous. You see? Because that's how you get this whole blousiness in the sleeve. I mean, if you started this piece just the size it is, you would have to start a new piece here, you know, which most sleeves do. Most sleeves, most construction, you'll find this piece comes into the back piece in a seam right here, and then your sleeve is a big flat piece that curves around and you fit it on that whole opening. So this is much different and more complicated. And now that I look at it again after 40 years, I'm stunned that I did that, actually. Now what I was hoping to do on each of these videos is to find the pattern. I also wanted to just see if in the, I have so many stories. Yeah, I want to show you those. And I thought I had this, I have that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm wearing the light colored bow and the blouse. Wait. Oh, you know what? I take that back. I take that back. I'm wearing the bow, but this is the other blouse. But let me show you this vest. Oh, see, yeah, see, there's a linen blouse. I thought for a moment it was this one. It's the other one. And I've got, this is one of the first things I knitted, this tan vest and the bow, and look at that. Here is that vest. This vest I knitted at least 44 years ago. And look how thin it is, how narrow. I made a lot of vests, and this is one of them. And this one has lovely pockets and a pointed front, you know, an angled with a point here, and the pocket. Obviously I had a pattern for this, and it's literally been in this package, this plastic container, for the bulk of 40 years. Oh, there it is. I've seen the light. This was a yogurt ad. I've seen the light. That's the first linen blouse right there. I'm sure I had this skirt on too, you know, because when they shoot, you've got to have the whole outfit on in case they need to see the whole outfit. This is kind of running long, but I can't, you know, my sewing was such a part of my acting and trying to be an actor and trying to work that it just goes hand in hand. Here's that little, I'll show you. So my mother was my mother was, as you know, my mother was great at everything. If you've been watching my channel. If you haven't, I hope you subscribe. My mother just passed away and I am bereft, but I am carrying on as she would want me to do. She taught me how to tie a perfect bow. Now I can't see what I'm doing, but I can feel it. So let's see how good I get. It needs to be tighter. Okay. So the under, if you've never been able to tie a good bow, you always have to start with the lower, and you use your finger to make it flat, and then you come over at the top, and then your thumb pulls this one through. Oh, I didn't get it even. It really helps to look in a mirror. Okay. Sorry, I'm having to look at the camera to see if I'm even close. Normally I'd be looking in the mirror. That looks like more like a man's bow tie. It shouldn't look like that. But anyway, and then I had the purple one, so I had an option. You always, the costumers were always like, bring an option, bring options. So these were the only two boxes I found with patterns. If I have other pattern boxes, I don't know where they are and I don't see them in there in all the stacks. So I'm going to bring you in close so you can see these patterns up close. I have not looked through the stack in 10 years, so. But I used to go through them all the time because I would be thinking, surely I have a pattern that, I have all this fabric. Surely I have a pattern that, you know, would work with some of the fabric I have. But anyway, come in close. You know, in the early 80s, we had no idea what was going on in the world, and we're living our life and enjoying it. And I was in New York. What could be more exciting than New York? So, actually, I hadn't gotten to New York yet. Oh my gosh. I had forgotten about this. And I do have a photo of a pair of jeans, a pair of bell-bottom jeans that I wore in the 70s, and I had mushrooms. Isn't that funny? I would not have remembered that at all, but I needle pointed the mushrooms onto the leg of my pants, and at some point I guess the pants didn't fit anymore, and I didn't want to get rid of that piece I had needle pointed on my jeans. But I have a picture of me in Florida at a car race, and I was wearing those jeans, so we'll have to check that out. Okay, we're just going to go through here quickly, and we're going to try, oh my gosh. Okay, let me just show you this. I do not have this outfit because I don't know what my mother did with her clothing. But she made this suit in white, and if I can find the picture, she is posed with the family going to church wearing this in white. And I don't know what happened to it. My mother's clothes just, she gave them away, she sold them. I don't know, it's gone. But I still have that beautiful pattern. Yeah, from the last video. Here is the Donna Karan pattern that I made in purple. And I don't recall ever making the jacket, so I had forgotten that it featured a jacket. But this is the purple dress from the last video, and I'll put the link. If you haven't seen the last video, I'll put the link right up there. Okay. Most of these I did make into things, but these are the later ones. Okay. Here's the pattern. Here's the pattern for the green emerald cocktail dress. And I will pull this back out another time. But this is the cocktail dress that I have in emerald green. And I also made this, I made this version with the turtleneck and no peplin in black, which I wore to my mother's funeral under her red coat. And then I also made this in red. Well, it was more of a purpley color, I think. Also wool knit. The black is wool knit, and the emerald green silk cocktail dress. So I made this one pattern into 3 dresses. That you've already seen that, so I'm going to wait to pull out. Until I have the outfits, I'm going to wait to pull out. I'm just looking for, yeah, okay. I'm looking for the older patterns, specifically of the dress I'm wearing. Everyone said I should be wearing my clothes. Well, this is a loose, boxy dress that I can still put on. I better put it this way so I won't trip over it. And let's try the other one. Okay, I can't wait to tell you about this vintage pattern. I did make this, and I do have this in the other room, and I want to show you. This is an apron that a family member made that has cross stitch on it. And I used to actually wear it in the kitchen. I thought, Kay, what are you doing? You're going to get a big ugly stain on that. And look at that cross work, that cross stitch. It's so beautiful. So it's folded up in my box, never to be heard from again. Okay, let's see if I can just find, I'm recognizing all of these I made into, okay. That is looking familiar. Well, I do not see the original pattern of the outfit I've showed you. I see all these other things. I see a dress in here that I did get rid of. Wasn't happy with it. And I made it and did get rid of it. Now this is hanging here, and I'll show that to you. This is a fabulous outfit. Oh, these are all, most of them are Vogue patterns. Yep. Okay, that one, yeah. And that one, yeah, that's true. Okay, the pattern, oops, the pattern for the first outfit I don't have. This is a Very Easy Vogue. Very often I would buy the Very Easy Vogue patterns because who wants to work hard if you don't have to? And so I saw it featured like this with this big boxy plaid, and I thought, well, I could make that. And so I did. So once again, it's linen, so it needs a good pressing. But I have a tie belt. Let's see, did they feature a tie? Where did it go? Where did it go? There you go. Yes, so this looks like a dress, right? It's not. It is a gathered skirt with a blouse, cinched at the waist with a tie belt. So here's the tie belt. And here is the skirt. And this skirt is, let's see, wait. Yes, it has a covered placket. We call this a placket. It's just another fold of the fabric rather than having the buttons exposed. When you have the buttons exposed, you run the risk of peekaboo. So, when you walk, so you have a little extra protection against peekaboo when you have a placket. And it just had a single button at the top. And this is a beautiful brown fabric that looks great with my skin color. And of course, once again, you have probably the 25-inch waist, I'm guessing, something like that, which does not give even a 1/4 of an inch. There is, I was trying to remember all the terms, the sewing terms, because it's been so long, but I can't remember what we call this reinforced material that goes underneath collars and waistbands. It's called something, and I know you guys are gonna write that down in a comment for me. One of the terms I remember well with sewing is basting. Now everybody thinks of basting as in cooking, but where you're basting your chicken or turkey as you cook it along. You're basting, you're picking up the juices and going over the turkey. But basting, when you're in sewing, basting is when you're taking two pieces. See, I have a back piece and I have two front pieces. The two front pieces come together in the button placket, and they're sewed together on the side. And when you're sewing things together, and this is true of knitting as well, many people, when I started knitting, when I really started again, I was going to a particular knitting store, and people would just love to knit, but they didn't want to assemble their pieces, and they would bring them into the store and have the store pay the person in the store to piece them together, to sew them together. So when you're basting your seams together, you're just taking a needle and thread and you're making big loose stitches. You can also just baste it together with pins, but very often with your sewing machine, if you don't have the tension just right, your sewing machine will push the top layer of fabric forward, and then you'll have a gap and it won't lay flat. So basting ensures that as you're sewing the pieces together with your machine, that you get a nice even seam with no gathers. And when you're making something with plaid, you do have to concern yourself with where it comes together. And can you imagine? Now these pieces are cut at an angle, because it's a skirt that has some flow to it. And so can you imagine? I mean, this is not perfect here because but it's close. It's close, and so as you're walking in this skirt, it looks like the plaid is going together. Whereas if you had the plaid here and you had the plaid up here and up here, it just wouldn't look as good. So let's look at the front. So it's very important that those plaid stripes come together. You have your placket, your button placket here, and so it's very important that this comes together, because it would look ridiculous if you didn't. And when you're dealing with plaid, you have to buy more fabric, because when you lay it out, you can't be as creative laying it out to get the most out of your fabric, because you have to put it together. This is, again, the seam is right here, so you have to be able to put it together. Wait, yeah, the seam is right there, so you have to be able to lay it out so that it takes some skill to lay out plaid. Let's put it that way. Otherwise, you would just have a jumble, and when you finished, it would just look like a mess, which in today's world probably would be normal. But you would have never seen anything crazy like that back in the 80s and 90s. The clothes were constructed beautifully and beautifully worn, long sleeve. Okay, and that is this pattern right here. We ought to open it up. Maybe you've never seen the inside of a pattern. When you pull out a pattern, a Vogue designer pattern, first of all, is going to be almost twice as big. The easy non-designer patterns are smaller, this size. And when you pull it out, for the first time, it'll just be about 4 or 5 big sheets of tissue paper, printed tissue paper. Now, since I've already made this pattern, all the pieces have been trimmed and folded back up and put in here. See, that's the first thing you're going to do when you buy a pattern, is you're going to trim all your pieces. And look how many pieces. Look how many pieces just in that outfit. You've got a lot. But you know what? Don't be intimidated. It's one piece at a time. And you'll have your instruction sheet. Now this is always printed on newsprint, and newsprint always yellows. So this is very yellow. This was white when I bought it. But the first thing it will show you are all the pieces, and all the pieces of the ensemble, and then all the pieces, pattern pieces, and then it will give you guidelines on things, and then it will show you how you lay it out. So you don't have to figure all this out by yourself. It's all here. You can lay it out. And then, of course, the whole construction on the back. This is where you get into the detail with the pockets and the plackets and the collar and the seams and all of that. I remember this like it was yesterday when I graduated college having an art degree. I love art, and I used to say art is my life. And it has been in one way or another all my life, because it's a real art to find and select a piece of fabric that's going to last, and figure out something that would look good on you. You have to sit there in the store and go, would that look good on me? Yes, if you're thin. Everything looks good when you're thin, okay? When you're chunky in the middle, not so much. And believe me, I know. So, but I remember this like it was yesterday. I graduated, and my art teacher, my mentor, he was my mentor and my teacher, he said, well, you can go, his point was, you've got to go to a big city if you want to get it, do anything with art. And so, since I was graduating from Knoxville, it was like, he said, you can go to Atlanta, and I thought, I just remember that red dirt and that hot, every time we would go to Daytona Beach for the July 4th Firecracker 400 NASCAR race, because my father was big into NASCAR. It was just driving through Atlanta would be like, oh, no, heavens, no, not going to Atlanta. And he said Washington, D.C., and I thought, well, what would I do there? He said, or New York, which would be the obvious place. You know, that's where you go if you're an artist, right? But New York to me was like a return address on junk mail. I mean, when you see it, New York, you know, it's like Publishers Clearinghouse, New York, or something. And it was just like just the idea of me alone moving to New York City with no money, with no job. It was unfathomable, and I didn't know anybody there. Well, I knew one person. She was in New Jersey. No, I didn't even know her yet. That's right. So I went to Washington because my cousin was there. And he was a commander in the U.S. Navy, okay? But he was learning to sew when I was there. And I'm sure I already had one of these, but this is what, I really should clear this stuff off. I won't pull this all the way out, but this is your cutting board. This is what you cut out your patterns on. And I've only had this, and I believe, I am safe to say, and it's turned really brown. This was white when I bought it. But you open it up and it shows you the bias. That's another word, that's another sewing term, the bias of the fabric. The bias of the fabric. You have your straight grain. I'll show you the straight grain. So this is the straight grain. And that's why you put your plackets and your buttons and your zippers always on the straight grain, right? Doesn't give. The bias is the diagonal. And you have give, even on a linen, or, you know, even on a fabric that doesn't stretch. It is a weave. So if you're pulling against the straight grain, it's not going anywhere. But if you're pulling against the bias, it's gonna kind of, you know, just stretch a little bit. So you have to be aware of the bias and the straight grain when you're laying out your patterns. And and this is all laid out in 1 square inches. So it really, well, it makes cutting out a dress possible, this thing. But my cousin had I think it was just cardboard. So I'm sure you can just buy this, but it was a cardboard stand that you could lay this flat, and then you didn't have to be on the floor. I'm just almost sure I cut out most of my dresses on the floor because I never had a big table to lay this on. And so I'm down on the floor. Oh my goodness. Okay, I just wanted to add that because that's something to consider. These things are not expensive, and you will keep this. This is my second one. I remember buying this one in, I don't know, I've had this one at least 25 years, but the very first one I had, I don't think it ever made it from Colorado back east. I bought my first sewing machine in Aspen, Colorado for $65. It was a Singer, and it was in a box. It didn't have a table. And my boyfriend at the time, David, he was very industrious, and he made me a sewing table out of pine. I think it was just 2x4s. It was very crude, but he put it together. He cut out a hole for the sewing machine, and so the cord could go down inside it. It didn't have much of a, you know, it didn't have a fold out or anything like that. It didn't have a much, but it was just about like that. And then he had a box here. You know, you could just put a few things in this little built-in box he had on the side, and then just 2 legs. And I thought of that. I thought of my mother's sewing machine, you know, because I don't know what happened to it. I didn't know what happened to my mother's sewing. My mother had a Singer that she bought in the 50s. It was walnut. It had the 4 drawers on, let's see, I think the drawers were on this side, yeah, and the fold-outs on this side. It was pretty scratched up because she made a lot of clothes on that thing. And I don't ever remember her getting a newer model. She may have. But I bought one similar vintage. But Singer had a sewing machine store at Rockefeller Center in Manhattan. And so, of course, I would go over there and, you know, oh my gosh, I could tell you stories. I mean, my favorite place was on 57th Street. It was a fabric store. And whenever I would go to an audition, rather than just taking the subway, you know, from the 20s or well, in the beginning, when I first went to New York, all the auditions were in Midtown because all the ad agencies were on, you know, Madison Avenue, and they were in Midtown in the 50s, 40s, and 50s streets, you know. Because Manhattan, if you've never been there, is laid out. It's long and skinny, and these are the numbered streets. And then you have big numbered avenues. You know, all of Madison Avenue, where all the ad agencies were like in the 50s, the streets in the 50s. And so I would do my audition, and then I would stop by my fabric store on 57th Street and just go in the back and sit down. They had a big long row of the books, and I would just peruse through the books and get an idea of something I thought would be useful. I never made anything just for me, for fun or anything. You know, I was always thinking, what could I use? You know, how could this benefit my wardrobe for jobs? And, you know, this is my dressy look, that kind of thing. You know, I was always thinking of that. And then I was always trying to push myself as a seamstress too. So you're going to see as we go along, if people keep watching, you're going to see as we go along much more complicated pieces that I made. So I'm going to end this one here. There's more I was going to show you today, but this is already too long, so I'm going to stop here. And this is going to continue. This is part 2. This is going to continue in a whole series because you know, people say, why did you save all that stuff? Well, maybe what I saved it for is for this series. Maybe I can inspire you in some way. But I was going to mention, I am wearing a piece that I made, and when I got to New York, which we're going to get into next, when I first got to New York in 1980, the Japanese designers were just hitting the fashion world. And you know, when you're a young model and everything, you're always looking at the fashion magazines and thinking, ooh, okay, that outfit costs $1,000, but I bet I could make that for less than 100, you know. And so that was always my thinking. But anyway, the Japanese designers, when they hit New York, I think it's Issei Miyake. Issei Miyake, I think, is how you pronounce the one that really hit. And I believe that's what this is, although I didn't see the pattern. I'm going to have to go back and look for it. But this is linen, and you can wear, I have a microphone here, but you can wear it with the open lapel. But there's just a button here and a snap under here because it's overlapped. And then it just runs down overlapped and then has a big tie for the waist. And you can roll the sleeves up and make it look more like that. You can wear this over something. The fabric's very sheer, so today I just put on a pair of black tights and a black tank so that I have something underneath it. But anyway, it feels like a dream because when you wear linen, you feel so very special. I can't tell you. So if you haven't ever made anything in linen, I encourage you to go to a fabric store, look for an easy pattern, very easy, just 2 pieces, and just start with something. I have a lot more things I want to show you. So please leave a comment below. If you loved this, please share with a friend. Sewing and knitting is not on my algorithm. This is a gardening channel. So I mean, I could start my own, but you know, I'm not actually making things, and I think most of the sewing channels are going to be showing people how to make things. And we may get there with knitting. I don't know if I'll get set up for sewing, and so we'll see how it goes. Meanwhile, I'm sharing my stories. So If that's of interest to you, please leave me a comment below. Please share with a friend, because they won't be shared by this platform because it's not in the algorithm. If you want to see more, you've got to share this. So thanks so much. God bless you. And I'll see you in the very next video, which I'm going to start filming right after I end this. See you next time.